This week, battles and the draft. First thing this week is the Battle of Fort McAllister. The fort guards a major river in Georgia. The starting points are laying siege. It's been a slow burn of the battle so far. But on the 27th, the CSS Nashville/Rattlesnake, an armed commerce raider, sent out against the Union blockade. The Montauk opens fire on the Rattlesnake, which has run aground. The fort tries to distract the ironclad, but the Rattlesnake suffers a fatal shot to its hull. A fire is lit and the Confederate naval presence is blown up. The Montauk moves back to position, but it hits a torpedo. Quick work by the crew grounds the vessel and repair it. They then send it back to Port Royal for an official solution. On the 3rd, the Union conducts a long naval bombardment, and it fails. Then withdraws, the Confederates held the fort. The next thing on the 3rd is the Conscription Act or Enrollment Act. Every man from the ages of 20 to 45 is enrolled. States are given quotas to fill, either by volunteers or by drafting. The same is done for congressional districts. In order to ensure this happens, the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, appoints a Provost Marshal General, a title not used since 1778. He appoints Lieutenant Colonel James Barnett Frye. Frye will set up state provost marshals at his own discretion to ensure everything is done correctly. The act is not without controversy. First, conscription is unpopular by itself. Lincoln and the administration are lambasted as tyrants by Democrats, and many wives and mothers are looking at their sons and husbands possibly for the last time. But more despised is the exceptions. If you don't want to be forced into the army, you can pay $300 or find a suitable replacement. This is for pacifists and conscientious objectors, and the wealthy. And they're ineffective. Well, the commutation is effective at raising money, but conscripts don't make good soldiers, and people get paid to stand in for someone else, desert, and do it many times over. But the army wants more men, and what they want, they get. Also on the 3rd, the National Academy of Sciences is made. Lincoln signs the bill creating with 50 starting members an organization to innovate and create solutions to the nation's biggest problems. The Academy shall, whenever called upon by any department of the government, investigate, examine, experiment, and report upon any subject of science or art. The actual expense of such investigations, examinations, experiments, and reports to be paid from appropriations, which may be made for the purpose. But the Academy shall receive no compensation whatever for any services to the government of the United States. And lastly on the 3rd is the Gold Certificate. The Gold Certificate is not for general use, but instead to pay back interest, federal debt, and customs. The government hopes to get quick capital on the promise of paying it back in gold. The final thing this week is a battle in Tennessee. After the Union victory at Stones River all the way back on the 2nd of January, Major General William S. Rosecrans has been unwilling to make any offensive movements against full General Braxton Bragg. Since that last engagement, Bragg has used cavalry under Generals Wheeler, Van Dorn, and Forrest to raid Union positions. This was unsuccessful and were repulsed after the Battle of Dover in the first week of February. On the 4th, Colonel John Coburn left Franklin, Tennessee with around 2,500 Union infantry, marching south towards Spring Hill using the Columbia Pike. After a handful of hours marching, Coburn skirmished with General W.H. Red Jackson's cavalry. The Union makes progress, pushing against the rebel horsemen. It's slow progress, but by nightfall, the Union holds just north of Thompson Station, a town just 4 miles north of Spring Hill. Coburn believes he's walking into a trap, but still decides to camp in the area. During the night, Confederate shells wake Coburn's men, and the Union Brigade decides that their only choice is battle the next day. As a bugle wakes them up early morning on the 5th, they look out to the hills that stand between them and Thompson Station. On those hills are Confederate pickets. A quick advance by Coburn pushes those pickets back down to the town, where a Confederate force that outnumbers him are situated. He calls up his artillery and starts bombarding the rebel positions. The Union charges down, causing disorder in the Confederate ranks, until an unlikely savior comes to rally them. A 17-year-old girl, Alice Thompson, who waves a Confederate flag, forms a defense of the town. The Union is pushed back up to the hill, being only protected with their cannons. They hold their line at the crest of the hill, turning back assaults. When their beloved artillery leaves the field, Coburn didn't order anything. His artillery and cavalry support withdrew without his word. On his far east, General Nathan Bedford Forrest uses this opportunity to reform his riders and pushes north and west, encircling the exposed Union infantry brigade. They still have a good position, and for 5 hours repulse the Confederate cavalry. But as night comes and supplies run low, Coburn is forced to surrender. Union lost over 1,446 men, most being captured, and the Confederates lost 357. A good victory for the Confederacy, but not much in terms of consequences besides the casualties. Then there is Sickles. He works his corps into shape. The Third Corps has not seen a brunt of action over time, but also hasn't had the experience that other corps have. Sickles drills his men hard, and while most generals are despised by the enlisted men, Sickles is beloved. He ensures his men get the supplies and care they need, and is seen like a father figure. And that's where the week ends. The U.S. Army has a new influx of men, and they might need it. This week saw 2 minor battles and 2 losses. These smaller battles are usually where the Union has its great moments, but we saw a waste of ammunition off the coast of Georgia and the encirclement of a brigade. The Union is in dangerous waters. European intervention is no longer an issue, and the question now is, will Congress pay for the war? Because the main event of this week is simple. On the 4th, the 38th Congress meets. The Conscription Act couldn't be passed under the 38th. The question is, what will be? Hello, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here, and I would like to take the time to thank my patrons, Rick, I'm not even trying to pronounce your last name anymore, Sam Aronow, John Fox, and Kevin Mack. Your guys' support means the world to me. I would also like to thank everyone who watches whatever I do. Around now, you should be seeing recommended video, playlist, and subscribe. And I would recommend anyone to watch more of this so you can try to understand my gobbledygook. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, and join me next week as we see how the war continues.